Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in Sophomore English. We are in Unit 5 and we are continuing in our study of drama with Sophocles' Antigone. We will now finish the play by working through scenes 3 through 5. I'm with you in your hymnal on page 837. At 2b, let's just concentrate for a few moments on what is suggested here about Greek tragedies. Let's write this down. Serious dramas that will share at least 4 common characteristics. 1, based on myths that were familiar to the original audience. 2, tell of a reversal of fortune, that's huge, write that down, from good to bad experienced by a man or woman of noble birth. 3, the main character may have a tragic flaw, a characteristic that leads to his or her downfall. 4, tragedy often presents audiences with a dilemma about understanding the hero's demise. The character's downfall results from his or her own actions. At the same time, this doom is clearly destined. It is brought about by fate. Of course, as we said in your freshman year, the real F word of Greek mythology is fate, right? That is to say, you cannot get beyond this force that is in some ways beyond the control of the character, right? That's huge. The theme or central message of a Greek tragedy is often a warning against excess, such as pride or passion. Tragedies demonstrate the limitations of human knowledge, sympathy, and foresight. They remind us that every action has consequences, often unforeseen, and we're going to obviously see this as we go, okay? Now, let's, and by the way, I really do recommend that you use a summary chart like the one on 837 to help you in your study. By the way, on 838, again, know this vocabulary stuff so that way you're ready for the assessment. And again, just to remind you, our big question, to what extent does experience determine what we perceive? This is a powerful question. All right, let's just remind ourselves now as we get ready to jump into scene 3. We are now at the middle of the play. 3 important things have happened. 1, Antigone has decided to bury the body of Polynices. Again, not by digging a big hole, but just like sprinkling dust, dirt, and some libations. 2, Creon has made it abundantly clear he's the one in charge. I made the rule. I will punish whoever breaks the rule. 3, Antigone breaks the rule, buries her brother, and is caught. She is outright defiant towards authority figures. She has no interest. We've used this term already a few times. Very Promethean. Don't tell me what to do. When you study in your junior year with me, I will make this observation, that one way to think about Americans is that simple line, don't tell me what to do. That very Promethean idea. Antigone is very much like this. She thinks that the gods are on her side, and she's willing to die. Her relationship with her sister Ismene, not so good. It was Ismene, right before we finished our last conversation, it was Ismene who reminded Creon, the king, you have a son named Haman, and Haman and Antigone are a thing, and they're going to get married. Creon spoke disrespectfully of Antigone and said, my son will have to find some other woman to marry because he will not be marrying this woman. She is dangerous. Let's point out for your notes really quickly that the patriarchy, which is of course that notion that men are in charge and tell women what to do, are always deeply concerned about a woman who has her own mind. And clearly Antigone is a woman who has her own mind. To that degree, let's just say it out loud, this is an amazing feminist text that Sophocles so long ago could construct a female character who is so strong, so defiant, and so willing to go to her death for what she feels is right. Beginning in scene 3 now, we are going to have the exchange between father and son. Jump down to 3b and we'll already start there. Have you ever witnessed it? Have you ever been a part of it? When the adult in the family, one of the kids in the family, come face to face, and the adult is not pleased, that the young person says 2 things, you're wrong, and you're wrong. And the parent says back, it's my house, you're under my roof, you will do what I tell you to do or jacked. To which the kid's response is, I'm leaving now and we'll never speak again. Now, if you've been involved in that kind of really intense negative energy, or you've witnessed it, you know how powerful it is when two people get really emotional, and all of a sudden you've got this exchange that goes back and forth, where maybe people say things they regret later. Do you remember, let's go to 3A really quickly. Do you remember in the freshman year when we did Romeo and Juliet? And do you remember when Juliet's mom comes to her and says, your dad, he's decided to marry you off to Paris. Of course, Juliet can't marry Paris because she just spent the night with her new husband, Romeo, something obviously Juliet's mom and dad do not know about. And Juliet says, I can't marry Paris. I will marry the killer of Tybalt, Romeo, before I marry Paris. All kinds of irony there. Do you remember that it will be Daddy who comes on stage, and he cannot believe that his daughter is defying him. You'll remember how badly he treats her. They scream at each other, and in the end, both mother and father treat Juliet very poorly. Why? Very emotional, right? Very emotional. We're going to witness what happens when Creon gets very emotional, and he starts to say some things he shouldn't say to his son, and then his son is going to say some things he shouldn't say to his father, and we got challenges. All right, let's go to work. We're going to start right away then with this exchange between father and son. It's going to be very, very emotional, very powerful.
Antigone, scenes 3 through 5, by Sophocles, translated by Dudley Fitz and Robert Fitzgerald.
Page 839.
Scene 3.
But here is Hymen, king, the last of all your sons. Is it grief for Antigone that brings him here, and bitterness at being robbed of his bride?
Enter Hymen.
We shall soon see, and no need of diviners. Son, you have heard my final judgment on that girl. Have you come here hating me, or have you come with deference and with love, whatever I do?
I am your son, father. You are my guide.
840.
Make things clear for me, and I obey you. No marriage means more to me than your continuing wisdom.
Good. That is the way to behave. Subordinate everything else, my son, to your father's will. This is what a man prays for, that he may get sons attentive and dutiful in his house, each one hating his father's enemies, honoring his father's friends. But if his sons fail him, if they turn out unprofitably, what has he fathered but trouble for himself and amusement for the malicious? So you are right not to lose your head over this woman. Your pleasure with her would soon grow cold, Hymen. And then you'd have a hellcat in bed and elsewhere. And to find her husband in hell. Of all the people in this city, only she has had contempt for my law and broken it. Do you want me to show myself weak before the people, or to break my sworn word? No, and I will not. The woman dies. I suppose you plead family ties. Well, let her. If I permit my own family to rebel, how shall I earn the world's obedience? Show me the man who keeps his house in hand. He's fit for public authority. I'll have no dealings with lawbreakers, critics of the government. Whoever is chosen to govern should be obeyed, must be obeyed in all things, great and small, just and unjust. Hymen, the man who knows how to obey, and that man only knows how to give commands when the time comes. You can depend on him no matter how fast the spears come. He's a good soldier. He'll stick it out. Anarchy, anarchy, show me a greater evil. This is why cities tumble and the great houses rain down. This is what scatters armies. No, no. Good lives are made so by discipline. We keep the laws then, the lawmakers, and no woman shall seduce us. If we must lose, let's lose to a man at least. Is a woman stronger than we?
Notice now, as we begin the final part of Antigone, the play's climax is going to begin to build towards this exchange, obviously, between father and son. Say three things about this exchange really quickly. By the way, note the irony, because we already kind of know the storyline. Note the irony on page 839 that Creon will say when his boy shows up. We don't need diviners, we don't need prophets to tell us the future. The irony will be, of course, here in a little bit, Tiresias the prophet is going to show up and is going to say to Creon, you're an idiot. Notice, the question that will be asked is, are you here for your woman, or are you here for me? Haman's response on page 839 is, I am your son, you are my guide. You make things clear for me, and I obey you. Top of page 840. No marriage means more to me than your continuing wisdom. So let's begin, first of all, by analyzing this brilliant rhetorical exchange that Sophocles creates. The father, are you here because of your woman, or are you here because of me? Son, you're my dad. I totally obey you in everything. You're my guide. You're the adult. I'm the kid. I'm here for you, Dad. Long monologue. Good. Because here's the deal. We have hierarchies. Parents rule over kids. That's the way it's got to be. What would happen if a kid could all of a sudden start going against his father's will? Anarchy. In the same way that that's true of a family, that's true of a state. You have to have a leader. The leader's got to make laws. People have to obey the laws. Ergo, obedience is always the key. Notice all of the rhetorical questions that he likes to ask. Like, for example, what does it mean if somebody breaks the law? Well, it's obvious for him that somebody's got to get jacked. But notice how he finishes Creon. He finishes by saying to Haman, you don't need this woman in your life. She will destroy your life. If we're going to be beaten, let it not be by a woman. So let's put it in our notes right away. Creon represents not only the tyrant, but the patriarchal tyrant. The one who says, I am in charge, I run the show, and everybody's got to obey me because I'm the leader or I'm the father. And whatever happens, we will not let a woman be the one that takes us down. The chorus will have a brief comment, and then Haman will come back. Now, this is brilliant the way Sophocles creates this, because Haman knows why he's here. And he's going to tell Creon why he's here. And it's going to shock us a little bit initially, but I want to go to 3b. When was the last time that you were in a situation where you knew as a kid, can I call you a kid? When you knew as a kid that the adult that you were talking to was wrong, as in straight up, no question, wrong. And you said to that adult, might have been a teacher, might have been a principal, might have been a parent, might have been law enforcement, and you knew you were right, and he or she was wrong. And you said to the adult, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. And how did that go over? Haman tries rhetorically to come at his father through the back door, rhetorically speaking. In other words, he doesn't come frontal. Notice Haman. He doesn't walk up to his dad and say, you are an idiot. What are you doing trying to jack with my girl? Nope, he doesn't do that at all. Rather, he takes a different approach. Let's study that approach. It's quite brilliant what Sophocles has set up for us here. Watch how a son tries to save his father. Of course, what's the irony? In the end, the boy who is talking will be the boy who is dead. Tragic.
Unless time has rusted my wits, what you say, King, is said with point and dignity.
Hymen, boyishly earnest.
Father, reason is God's crowning gift to man, and you are right to warn me against losing mine. I cannot say, I hope that I shall never want to say, that you have reasoned badly. Yet there are other men who can reason too, and their opinions might be helpful. You are not in a position to know everything that people say or do, or what they feel. Your temper terrifies them. Everyone will tell you only what you like to hear, but I, at any rate, can listen. And I have heard them muttering and whispering in the dark about this girl. They say no woman has ever so unreasonably died so shameful a death for a generous act. She covered her brother's body? Is this indecent? She kept him from dogs and vultures? Is this a crime? Death? She should have all the honor that we can give her. This is the way they talk out there in the city. You must believe me. Nothing is closer to me than your happiness. What could be closer? Must not any son value his father's fortune as his father does his? I beg you, do not be unchangeable. Do not believe that you alone can be right. The man who thinks that, the man who maintains that only he has the power to reason correctly, the gift to speak the soul, a man like that, when you know him, turns out empty. It is not reason never to yield to reason. In flood time, you can see how some trees bend. And because they bend, even their twigs are safe, while stubborn trees are torn up, roots and all. And the same thing happens in sailing. Make your sheet fast. Never slacken, and over you go. Head over heels and under, and there's your voyage. Forget you are angry. Let yourself be moved. I know I am young, but please, let me say this. The ideal condition would be, I admit, that men should be right by instinct. But since we are all too likely to go astray, the reasonable thing is to learn from those who can teach.
You will do well to listen to him, King, if what he says is sensible. And you, Hymen, must listen to your father. Both speak well.
Now, let's pause for a moment. It's interesting that the chorus says, you're both right on both sides. We agree with both of you. Because what's being presented here for Sophocles is philosophically two, I won't say incompatible positions, but certainly two positions that all Greek audience members understood. Let's go through them really quickly. And Hymen's argument. I'm with you on 841. Notice Hymen begins with reason. In other words, hey, Dad, I know you're inclined to get emotional. I'm not going to get emotional. For example, watch this, watch this. The last time you were having that exchange that you wrote down in 3B with that adult, and you were right, and you knew the adult was wrong, how did you tell the adult that you were right and the adult was wrong? Did you come right out and say, you're an idiot, you're wrong? Or did you rather have a certain approach, rhetorically speaking, to try and say something that you knew the other person would agree with? Like what Hymen says, you know what? The best way to deal with situations that are highly potentially flammable is reason and not emotion. Notice he says, but you are not absolute. You are possibly wrong. And, notice Hymen, you should hear what the other people in town are saying about what Antigone did. The other people in town, by the way, no. He doesn't say anything about the fact that Antigone is his girl. No, he goes at this by saying, you are being talked about badly in the town because there's people who think maybe you didn't do very right by Antigone. What did Antigone, notice Hymen uses rhetorical questions too. What did Antigone do that's so indecent? She buried her brother, and for that she's going to be killed? There's people, notice he says it, there are people who are saying this, genius. It's not him saying it. It's that others are saying it. Let me help you, Dad. Let me help you understand. The people who you're governing over, they don't agree with this. You'll remember earlier, Antigone said this. She said earlier, these people agree with me. They're just afraid of you. And because they're afraid of you, they don't stand up. I'm not afraid of you. I stand up. Notice Hymen. He's a little bit more gentle. He's a little bit more intelligent in his approach. And he says, I'm not saying this. But I beg you, he says, do not be unchangeable. Now, let's put this in our notes. You'll remember that we talked a number of times in 303 together about knowledge. Epistemology is our favorite term here. Ology meaning study of. Epistis coming from that Greek root of knowledge. In other words, what can you know? There are three possibilities, epistemologically speaking, you'll recall. The first is absolutism. I am right, you're wrong. Absolutely certain of it, no doubt whatsoever. But of course, as we've said, the only problem with the absolutist epistemological position is, yeah, crazy things happen, right? Foolish people fly airplanes into buildings and kill lots of people when they have these absolutist positions. So the absolutist position is a dangerous position to be in. That's exactly what Hymen is saying to his dad. I don't think you want to be in an absolutist position. By the way, just to remind ourselves, there is the opposite of the absolutist position. That is the relativist position. That is to say there is no truth. There are no absolutes. The only problem with that position, as we have said, is saying there is no truth is itself a truth. To say there are no absolutes posits an absolute. And therefore, what we call the performative contradiction, this makes no sense at all. Which begs the question, well, if I don't want to be an absolutist and walk around thinking I know everything, and clearly the relativist position, the extreme relativist position is logically incoherent, then what can I do? There is a third position. It's, of course, the fallibilist position, the position of science. And by the way, the fallibilist position is what Haman is recommending to his father. In other words, don't think you know everything. Don't think that you can't be wrong. And then he gives a couple of word pictures that are brilliant. The tree in the wind, if it's not able to bend, right? And at 3a, by the way, we see this same word picture in Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, the famous Chinese book of mysticism. That notion of Taoism, that notion that if the tree is too hard and rigid, it snaps in the wind. Or sailing. You have to be careful when you're sailing, because if you're too rigid with your sails, you'll tear them and then you won't be able to sail. Both of these are powerful word pictures that again suggest, hey Dad, can I at least just make you consider a little bit the possibility that you might be wrong. Forget your anger. Bottom of page 841. Let yourself be moved. I know I'm young, but please let me say this. The ideal condition would be, I admit, that men should be right by instinct. But since we are all too likely to go astray, I'm at the top of now 842, the reasonable thing is to learn from those who can teach. Whoa! Now, in your junior year, write this down at 3a. In your junior year, we're going to study the great Walt Whitman. And we're going to get to the Song of Myself, passage 46-47, where Whitman will say that it is the job of every adult, and especially teachers, to help the student or the young person learn how to destroy the teacher. Whoa, we don't mean load up 12 gauge and go shoot your